Dr. Gold, welcome to the program. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. So tell us about the book, The Plot Against the Kids. Why did you write it? What will it do for our children?
Yes, I wrote this book, which you'll show later, because nobody had written the truth about what really happened in a way that children and adults could understand in kind of a simple way. I've written more complicated content where I really deconstruct things that the NIH, CDC, and the FDA has done. But what really actually happened was essentially a takedown of middle class America, an attack on the family unit, parents against children, the schools against the parents, things like that. And I really wanted people to understand it in a pretty easy way. When you think about things we endured, right, which people want to forget, but it happened. 6 foot social distancing. What was that? Well, 6 foot social distancing was actually to close the schools. Because if you had to make 6 feet between children, you actually almost no school could do that. It was kind of a known number that we really couldn't overcome. And what did all these things mean to the kids? I mean, they went 1 to 2 years, depending on where they lived. Life was completely disrupted. They were told to stand in circles on the ground and they had to do that for a while, and then they don't have to do that anymore. And they were told to put paper in the faces, and they had to do that for a while, and then they don't have to do that anymore. And they were told you had to stay 6 foot away and you couldn't see grandma. What did all that mean? But we don't want to scare kids, right? We want to teach them and we want to explain to them that the best authority in their life is their parents who love them. So that's what the story is.
Amen. That's fantastic. And it's so desperately needed, folks. A lot of children really were scarred by this horror show
Yeah.
that we all endured. And we need tools to help them make sense of that and also to make sure that humanity never falls for that again. But Dr. Gold, we still are not totally free of that. In fact, just recently, I mean, just like last week, Donald Trump supposedly got another mRNA COVID booster. A lot of us are struggling to understand what that means and why. What do you make of that?
I was like speechless, because I wanted to believe that when he took the first shot, part of me wanted to believe he didn't really take it, but I knew he did. He was a president. He was part of Walter Reed. I mean, but now to have voluntarily, willingly done that means he really is turning his ears off when it comes to all the data, the science that's out there. I really think there's no excuse. I also think sets a terrible example for other Americans. It sets a bad example with our relationship with big pharmaceutical companies that have a huge amount of power. I don't understand it. And on a personal level, it's not healthy. It's simply not healthy. It's simply not healthy. This is a man who, fortunately, is very, very healthy. And I don't understand why he would put something in his body that's not healthy when he knows really the entire world really rests on his shoulders. So it was very disheartening. There's nothing to justify taking an mRNA shot. Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
I agree with you 100%. And this is personal for me. My dad's heart stopped 36 hours after taking his first Pfizer injection in Miami. So I have a special vendetta against this whole thing. But Dr. Gold, I want to ask you about the broader kind of Make America Healthy Again movement. Obviously, there's been some progress, but we still see the Department of Health and Human Services approving some of these mRNA concoctions. We still see them handing out grants to people that, in my humble opinion, ought not be getting our tax money. What do you make of the big picture? Are we making progress? Are we moving in a good direction? Why are we still at least flirting with some of these crazy things? How do we make sense of this?
Right. I don't think progress is fast enough for any of us who really care about the MAHA issue, which is you, I, and lots of many millions of us. On the other hand, I have a lot of respect and empathy for the position that Secretary Kennedy's in. It's incredibly difficult to do anything. I've said for many, many years that the pharmaceutical industry runs the federal government, not the other way around. It's an unbelievably difficult job. And on the positive, I want to say that, if it wasn't Trump and Kennedy there, we would have taken about 30 steps backwards. So we have made progress. It could be more, but we are so blessed to not have gone backwards. There are individual states now that have the authority and the room to deviate from the federal government. I live in the free state of Florida, which has the great Surgeon General Latipo, and he has taken steps completely different than the federal government. So we have that opportunity. So yes, it's frustrating that the HHS is, a very slow behemoth. They're hard to turn around and a lot of vested interests. On the other hand, it is also up to the citizens to seek out for your solutions, I encourage people to vote with their feet. You move to a state that is more free. I don't know why anybody who has children, for example, lives in states like California, which can really pretty much take away your children. Minnesota is pretty similar in terms of if you disagree with the powers that be on medical issues. So vote with your feet, move to states that are more free, and then advocate within your state for the freedoms in that state. For example, vaccine mandates are never going to be the law of the land in Florida. So I have a lot less to worry about that than people who live in, other states. So we are to be happy about the solutions that we've had, and then we have to keep pressuring people like Secretary Kennedy to do more.
Amen. Yeah, Florida's a great place. We've had the great Dr. Joe Latipo on here multiple times, and so grateful for what he's doing. And hey, we always have room in Florida for liberty-minded people who want to help us to protect that liberty. Dr. Gold, you mentioned moving as one way that people can get involved. You also mentioned getting educated, becoming well-informed on these issues so we can make better decisions. But on the political level, I mean, what are some ways that people can actually try to make positive change? You said encourage Secretary Kennedy. What are some other ways that people can get involved to try to protect the health of our children, to try to protect our basic freedoms?
First of all, there's really a couple of things. One is local government matters a lot more to your daily life than federal policy. So if you think you can sit on the sidelines and let your neighbors be on city council, be on school boards, you're wrong. You're wrong. They're not going to vote the right way, most of them, most of the time. So it is actually incumbent upon you to be an involved citizen. And this is not a joke. I mean, this takes time. It's not easy to be on the school board. It's not easy to be on city council. But these are the things that actually matter a lot in your daily life. If you had mask mandates in your area, there was a good chance that there was a local government edict that required that. So that's one thing you can do. In your personal life, and I won't talk about it too much, but in your personal life, you need to find a doctor who's not going to lie to you. That's why we built Gold Care. We built it expressly so every American could have access to the honorable physicians that I allied with over the past 5 years. So there are things you can do there, so that I'm not just talking about Gold Care. There are businesses you can go to. There's Patriot Mobile, there's Old Glory Bank, Public Square, right? There's Gold Care. You need to find those solutions in your life that allow you to have more freedom. They absolutely exist.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, some of those companies that you mentioned are sponsors here on this program. So, folks, we do encourage you. One of the ways we can resist this monster is by stop spending our dollars on companies that hate us and start spending them with companies that provide better services and don't hate us and don't wage war on our freedom. Dr. Gold, I want to talk about the possibility of them trying something like this again. I mean, your book, The Plot Against the Kids, real good way to inoculate our young people, no pun intended, against future mind viruses like what we saw during the COVID pandemic. But do you think they could get away with something like that again if they were to come up with a sufficiently scary public health scare?
The sad news is I absolutely think, yes, this can be pulled again. It was devastating to see how quickly Americans willingly gave up their constitutional freedoms. It was incredible to me to watch that. If you had asked me ahead of time, would people just collapse like that? I would have said, heck no. So yes, I don't think we're in such jeopardy of that right now under the current administration. I don't think it's zero, but I think it's very low. But of course, current administration is not going to be there forever. Okay. And this will happen again. And I want to remind people that medical tyranny, using medical fear, is a very honorable, old-fashioned way of corralling the citizens. This is in the French Revolution, they had Robespierre Reign of Terror, which was essentially the Committee on Public Safety, right? So this is a very old trick. Of course, they're going to use medical fear again. It's also why we built Gold Care, because we want you to be informed. Because when they try this again, whether they call it disease X or measles or RSV, whatever they call it, we want you to have the information so you don't panic. You shouldn't panic anyway, but in case you need the facts so you don't panic, we've got them for you. So yes.
That's fantastic. And we've only got a few minutes left, but I do want to go to another book that you released not too long ago. We talked about it on another program I do for another platform, Selective Persecution, the Legalization of American Fascism. And that is partly the story of what you went through when the FBI broke into your house, terrorized you, and essentially put you in a cage. Talk about that. I mean, what was it like to experience firsthand the kind of tyranny that you're describing here? And I mean, how does a normal person prepare for even the possibility of having to face something like that?
So it's absolutely terrible when you realize that your government can come after you, will come after you, especially when you love your country. It's incredibly painful, demoralizing, threatening, and very, very scary. People have to understand that any government has a huge amount of power. That's why our founding fathers specifically limited the powers of the government. That's why we have been lulled into thinking the government is good and beneficent. I understand people are finally awakening, but we had lived for so long in a kind of a peaceful situation within our our four borders. But it's not true if you think that governments are benign. Governments are not benign. They'll take as much power as we give them. So I had a rude awakening, and I used this book, Selective Persecution. You can find it on Amazon, to use my story of J6, my story as a COVID whistleblower, to explain what happens if you get in the crosshairs of the government. And you will be shocked to learn how much tyranny and fascism is already part of our national hierarchy, part of our national structure. The book is really spellbinding. I mean, I talk about my time in prison. I talk about the FBI beating the door down. I talk about how do women end up in prison for 15 years, right? I'm a woman. I was in the women's prison. Like, how does that happen? Who's in there? Is this something that we believe in? And if you're politically conservative, you might be shocked to hear what my answer is. I don't. I think the federal prisons should almost be dismantled at this point based on what I directly observed. So I encourage everybody to read this book. It took me more than 2 years to write. It's very well referenced. I exposed so much about Fauci. My goodness, it's like a whole book on Fauci in the book, Selective Persecution.
Yeah, and speaking of Fauci, we had Robert F. Kennedy on here talking about Fauci before he became HHS secretary, and I mean the guy, he's like a monster in human flesh, and it didn't start with the COVID stuff.
Correct.
We've just got a couple minutes left, Dr. Gold. Do you think we're going to see justice? Are some of these people who did this to us going to face accountability? Do you think?
I know the satisfying answer is yes, but I don't believe so. I've never believed Fauci was going to come to justice. I've never believed that. But at least you yourself can be armed as you go forward. And you might say, looking back, oh, I'll never fall for that. But like you might, like you probably did. Most people did. So the way forward is to understand what happened. That is what inoculates you. And by the way, a side note on Fauci, chapter 6 in Selective Persecution exposes so much on Fauci. It's so incredible. This was something he'd been doing his whole career. What he
Mhm.
did to us in COVID, he'd done his whole career.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the guy. I know he's got his little pardon from auto pen, but I understand some state attorneys general are looking
Yeah,
into state level charges, and I hope that we see some justice
me too.
eventually. Dr. Gold, your new book just came out. I mean, literally just came out, end of September. The Plot Against the Kids, a true COVID story. It's available on Amazon, folks. You can get it for your children, your grandchildren. It's available as a hardcover for less than $20. Is there any other place people can go to get a copy of that, Dr. Gold? And how do people follow your work and get involved?
I just think, I hate to say it, but I think the easiest place to find the books are on Amazon. I will
Yep.
tell you that the Surgeon General is in this book. He loved it. He's got 3 kids. The kids loved it. They've read it about 30 times. It's a delightful book that hasn't been out anywhere in terms of what's happened with COVID. Just follow me on X, Dr. Simone Gold, Dr. Simone Gold. I'd be honored if you read the books, but most importantly, I think that you'll have a good time with the kids' books and you will be shocked and spellbound by the Selective Persecution book.
Yeah, well, we appreciate all that you do, Dr. Gold, to raise awareness of these things, now to help protect our children from this. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, Alex.